Bombs fell on my sleep last night. You would wonder how and why and the rest of it. Beirut was bombed. The kind of ammunition that fell on that helpless city broke my heart. Israel will have its justification for doing what it does. Hezbollah will have its own justification for pursuing its agenda. But the people, whether they be in Jordan or in Gaza or on the West Bank, they are helpless victims, like those in Israel as well on the 7th of October. A couple of weeks ago, I got a very angry response from one of my viewers, obviously from a particular community, virtually abusing me in the most extreme fashion for not saying a word about the ongoing outrage in Gaza. By then, Lebanon had not been dragged into the vortex of this bloody conflict. My viewers would remember that nearly a year ago, in October of last year, I posted 2 videos stating my position on this conflict, which was at that time in its early stage. In those videos, I stated very clearly that, in my opinion, Israel was acting in a most foolish manner and was doing so mainly because it drunk on its own power, and that though these actions are calculated to make life safer for the Jews, the final outcome will indeed be that Jews will be safe nowhere in the world, including Israel. That's what I said then. And I repeat the same thing now. But what I want to say in this present video, the thought I want to offer to you for your consideration, and I do so with fear and trembling, is that I have been keeping quiet about this, not because I was indifferent, not because I was not following up or monitoring the developments. I was doing that with a very heavy heart, but with a sense of inevitability about how things were playing out. And the main point I want to make here, the main thing I want to do in this video, is to explain to you why a touch of inevitability hangs on this whole episode. In one of the videos shared with you last year, one of the 2 that I've already referred to, I said that this conflict will necessarily widen. I said that Hezbollah will get involved, and that thereafter it would become inevitable that Iran gets involved. Though the time frame or the timeline I predicted at that time went wrong, that's because perhaps I overestimated the strength, the physical strength, the strength of armaments, as well as the strength of will on the part of both Hezbollah and particularly Iran. Iran finances and arms its subsidiaries, but plays it safe. Well, that's Iran's choice. It may have its own compulsions. But then I think morality demands that it has some concern for the agents that it uses in the broad concept of the axis of resistance. Well, I wish to say nothing more on it, because these are emotive issues where people refuse to think rationally. Let me here, from now onwards, confine myself to the main point I want to argue here, which again may not Please, those who want me to play a partisan role, which I resolutely refuse to do, I am neither on the side of the Jews nor on the side of Palestinians. I am on the side of truth, which nobody wants to heed, and which is also the reason why I thought I would keep quiet on it. Now that I've been challenged and urged to say something, here is what I have to say. The real villain of this peace, this bloody peace, is neither Israel, nor Hamas, nor Hezbollah, nor Iran. The real villain of the peace is religion. Please understand, it is religion. But for religion, or the different religions, people in this region would have lived peaceably together as brothers and sisters without any of these problems. The strangest thing in world history is the Jews and Muslims, the followers of Islam, the descendants of Ishmael and the descendants of Isaac, they are actually brothers. Isaac and Ishmael were sons of Abraham. Abraham is the common root or the common stock of both religions. And I think the quarrel between them cannot be settled precisely because they are brothers. And what is it that makes brothers to live in perpetual and unending conflict? What is it that robs brothers of the freedom as well as the right to live in peace? It's not politics. It's not some land dispute. It is not some occasional provocation here, there, and everywhere. It is religion. Please understand. Now, to understand this better, let me take my viewers back to a tradition, to the beginning of the tradition that both Muslims and Jews share in common. Both believe that the ancestry of humankind can be traced back to Adam. Adam apparently had two sons, Cain and Abel. Cain kills Abel in the context of a worship. Please understand. I've done a video on this before. Cain invites Abel to a worship. Both offer whatever they could to God, their God. And unfortunately for the rest of humankind, God was pleased to accept the offerings of Abel, but was displeased with what Cain had to offer. And Cain, in order to seek and secure for himself the permanent goodwill of his God, and Cain's God has to be a bloodthirsty God, he improvises his own litany of worship, his own mode of worship, which happens to be human sacrifice. And there was only one human being within reach, and that was his own brother, Abel, and he kills him. The Bible doesn't say, the Quran doesn't say, for strategic reasons, because it is very inconvenient to state these truths, but the truth is very obvious in the context. Cain kills his brother Abel as an offering to his God. That is the religious tradition to which we belong. In fact, this pattern is common to the religious heritage of humankind. Now, when I say this, those who belong to other religions will get very angry with me. But whenever and wherever the vested interest of religions, or let me put it in a more neutral fashion, the religious interests of people are involved, they'll behave like Cain. If you read Hindutva by Veer Savarkar, Vinod Damodar Savarkar, V.D. Savarkar, in the opening pages of that very interesting book, written in 1923, republished I think in 1926, he gives us an epic narration of the most brutal way in which Buddhism was eradicated from India, because Buddhism threatened the interest of Hinduism. I'm not blaming Hindus, I'm not blaming Hinduism. I'm only saying that irrespective of the various names that you give to religions, ultimately all religions share the common tradition of Cain, that when it comes to promoting, protecting, enlarging one's own interest, the interest of a particular religion and those who constitute the religious community professing that religion, then there are no limits. Extreme barbarity, extreme brutality is considered very legitimate. In fact, it's considered a holy, sacred duty. And it is taking into account this kind of a perverse, diabolic, satanic streak that the French philosopher Voltaire said that no man is a more cheerful killer than the one who thinks that he is killing for the sake of his God. So, the conflict between the Jews and the Arabs, and the Jews and followers of Islam in general, cannot be settled unless the question of religion is examined with brutal honesty and its perverse, diabolic, satanic, malignant element recognized for what it is, and humankind is liberated from its subjugation to that bloodthirsty, diabolic streak in all religions. Religion per se is of this kind. I do not believe that any religion can be pacifist. A religion can pretend to be pacifist until its interests are questioned. So, no one can settle the Israel, Gaza, the Israel, Lebanon, the Israel, Iran, the Israel Arab, the Israel Muslim conflict without settling the religious issue. Because, and I have to say this because there is no alternative to saying this, the kind of religiosity that is particularly characteristic of people of this bracket, what's called the Abrahamic family of religions, is extremely dichotomous. All three Abrahamic religions are monotheistic. And everyone agrees that monotheistic religions are more intolerant of other religions than polytheistic religions. So, when a religion is monotheistic, it comes under the logical, philosophical compulsion to believe that the members, the followers of that religion alone are right and others are infidels. Therefore, tolerating them or accepting them on equal terms is infidelity to one's own religion. It's unfair to one's own God. It's tantamount to heresy or lack of truthfulness or loyalty to one's own God, one's own religion. It is an unfortunate reality. But then, the difference between monotheistic religions and polytheistic religions is only relative. There is no grounds to believe that polytheistic religions are inevitably, necessarily, and purely tolerant. There is no historical evidence to sustain that article of belief. Now, if these religions, the so-called Abrahamic religions, though they originate in the same human stock, if they could have been rendered compatible with each other, there would have been peace among them. The more monotheistic they are, the more incapable of tolerating each other, particularly if you are also monotheistic. For example, even in the Indian context, and I've experienced it several times because I've been active in the interreligious movement. And together with Swami Agnivesh, I started a movement in Delhi, and that's called Religions for Social Justice. The idea was to bring together various religious leaders in the Indian context on the shared principle of commitment to social justice. Because it's impossible to bring religious leaders together on a religious agenda, because religion necessarily divides. So we thought, Agnivesh and I thought, that by projecting social justice, which is a non-ritualistic but spiritual idea, we could bring people together, and we succeeded to a large extent. But whenever it came to anything religious, I found the hostility between Christians and Muslims within the group of Religions for Social Justice, was irreconcilable, insurmountable. A Christian would tolerate a Hindu better than a Muslim. A Muslim will tolerate a Hindu more easily than a Christian. Though in terms of history, in terms of scripture, in terms of belief, a Christian and a Muslim are closer together, they belong to the same stock. On the ground, this is the reality. And religion alone is responsible for this. So my ardent conviction is that the root of the problem is religion, and unless and until this is handled, and unless and until there is a global debate on what religion is and what it is not and what it should never be, and unless and until people are liberated from their blind, irrational, superstitious, diabolic subjugation to religion, there will be no peace in the world. The foremost stumbling block to world peace and human progress is religion, whereas the greatest catalyst for human growth and liberation is spirituality. God is a continuing challenge to be free. God is the guarantor of human freedom, the cosmic insurance against slavery. Whereas religions that are erected in the name of God become the greatest enemy to human freedom and a chronic source of conflict between human beings, one religious group trying to either subjugate the other or eliminate the other. Now look at the logic that prevails in this region: Israel, Gaza, occupied West Bank, Lebanon, Syria, Iran, so on and so forth, this entire region. Well, I can add Saudi Arabia to it. The other countries in this region are militarily of no consequence. What is the dogmatic assumption that governs their outlook? I can live in peace only if the other is eliminated. Two-nation theory. Everybody says that peace can be established in this region if the two-nation theory is implemented. That is, Israel and Palestine become two separate, independent, sovereign states. This theory has been in existence at least for 70 years, if not more. Rather than progress towards the realization of that goal, the parties concerned have moved further and further away from that goal, which makes me think, I don't know about others, I'm not as wise as the American international relations pundits are, and French and German and so on and so forth. Going by the empirical evidence so far, I think this idea will not work. This idea can work provided it is preceded by, and the way to the realization of this goal is cleared by initiating a sustained, brutally honest debate on religion. People have to be liberated from their irrational subjugation to religion. Because so long as they have this poison within them, they cannot live in peace with their neighbor. The Jews and the Arabs fight like cats and dogs precisely because they are brothers, and to make matters worse, they are also neighbors. If they were brothers but had been located at a great distance to each other, for example, if the Arabs had lived in Palestine and the Jews were located somewhere in Africa, as was the plan early in the 20th century, there would have been no problem. But here, two deadly factors have come together. They are brothers, they are also very close to each other. It's like the daughter-in-law, mother-in-law situation. Why does the daughter-in-law and the mother-in-law fight so ferociously? Because they are together. Proximity, the pain of proximity. And what really poisons proximity is religion. So I'm totally convinced that unless and until we liberate people from religion, their blind, irrational self-surrender to religion, the kind of superstition, the kind of irrationality, the kind of worse than animal state that religion creates for human beings, you cannot create peace in this region. Well, you cannot create peace anywhere. What's the problem in India? Religion is now becoming the foremost threat to the viability, the health, and wholeness of Indian democracy. What was the problem in Europe for centuries? Two sects within Christianity, Protestants and Catholics, were fighting, and the amount of blood that was spilled. And ultimately, Europe became wiser. They realized that religion is a problem, so they created this idea of a secular society, a secular state. And India corrupted that idea by redefining secularism as equidistant to all religions, which is utterly stupid. It is not viable, it cannot be practiced. And by now, it has already been proved that secularism of that kind, which was actually pseudo-secularism, there's only one secularism, which is the state having nothing to do with religion, a complete separation between state and religion, and the state patronizing no religion at all, which will not be acceptable in the long run to a society like India, where one religion brutally dominates the other, a society of which 80% belong to one particular religion, cannot be secure in the European sense of the term. So I can understand why this Indian mishmash of secularism was enunciated. And to my great surprise, it held the ground for nearly 50, 60 years, and now it's completely demolished. So a communally oriented state is being created right under our nose. So the fundamental issue, therefore, is religion. What is religion and what is not religion? What happens to religion when it is admixed with politics? What happens to religion when it has to be supported with brutal power, with bomb, with sword? What happens to religion when it acts as a source of malevolence between people, hating each other on the basis of God's religion, etc.? Now, you read a book like Liberty by John Stuart Mill, J.S. Mill, John Stuart Mill, one of the sanest thinkers of the 19th century England. In that book, it's a classic book on human liberty, where it deals with religious freedom as well. He says, very interestingly, that religious freedom was available to people only in contexts of religious indifference. Religious freedom will be available to people only in context of religious indifference. The more people take their religion seriously, the more intolerant they will become of practitioners of other religions, and the only way they can defend their gods and their religions is by using maximum force. Try and eliminate people of other religions, then your God is safe, your religion is safe, you are also safe. This is the only logic that will work in the context of religious bigotry, religious orthodoxy, religious fanaticism. And unfortunately, the three religions that are bracketed together as Abrahamic religions, they are the worst in this respect of religious tolerance or intolerance. They make religious intolerance a spiritual virtue, something that they owe to their God. What kind of God it is, I don't understand. My position is very clear. A God that does not allow me to love all my fellow human beings, or a God who expects me to hate any human being on planet Earth for whatever reasons, is not acceptable to me. A religiosity that poisons my inner integrity with hatred towards any of my fellow human beings is not acceptable to me. That is why I cannot take a partisan role in this bloody conflict. I wish it hadn't happened, but I know it will happen. I also know it cannot be solved easily unless and until, through this long process of suffering, people liberate themselves from their slavery, mindless, stupid slavery to religion, which adds nothing to their welfare, nothing to their peace and progress. It will only cause unending and unspeakable suffering. That's the only thing history has revealed to us so far, starting with Cain and Abel, a brother killing brother in the context of worship. And humanity can never outgrow that reality so long as this diabolic idea, self-centered idea, perverse idea of religion remains. Human beings cannot live in peace. The peace and prosperity of humankind as a whole is under serious peril, and religion will become the foremost defender of injustice, inequality, and oppression, the total abolition of freedom to humankind. And the sooner we realize it, the better. I can only refer you to one of my recent books, Beyond Religion, Imaging a New Humanity. I'm totally convinced that every spiritual luminary in the world, I'm certainly true. I'm certain that this is true of Christianity, because Jesus said, "I've come to set you free from religion." Though Christians have created a religion in the name of Jesus Christ, Jesus said, "I've come to set the captives free." He was definitely talking about the slaves to religion. In the Kerala context, there was a sane person like Sri Narayana Guru, who said it doesn't matter which religion you practice so long as it doesn't affect your humanity. So Narayana Guru understood that religion was irrelevant to your becoming a better human being. Madamedayalum manushan nannayal madi. It doesn't matter which religion you practice, so long as you're able to be a good human being. And that was also the goal that Jesus Christ prescribed to human beings. Be perfect even as your Father in heaven is perfect. Jesus never said be religious. Never. On the other hand, he warned people against the advocacies of the priestly class, because he said they will lead you to the pits. And the only class of people Jesus condemned with utmost vehemence was the priestly class. He called them hypocrites, he called them whited sepulchres, and he called them an utter liability to humanity. But who heeds? Who heeds? There is no conflict in human history, even political context, I tell you, in which religion has not played a perverse and diabolic role. So I rest my case there. For God's sake, let's rid ourselves of this curse. Let's reclaim for ourselves the freedom to love and embrace each other, irrespective of labels. All man-made labels are malignant, malevolent, diabolic. They are an insult to God. There's an insult to humanity. Every label is a chain that we impose on ourselves. Break these chains, become free. Free to love, free to care, free to celebrate life together. Jai Hind.